Here we go. Should pop up. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Carol.
Hello, book arts folks. Thanks so much for inviting me to come and talk with you. I love sharing my books. I have been a calligrapher since I was in high school, and that's in the 1960s. So I've been a calligrapher a long time, but it took me until about 1980 to become a little bit interested in making books. And it all began because I realized that I'd run out of wall space and I could do my calligraphy in a book and it would just neatly find its way to a shelf and not take up a lot of room. I also love books because they're three-dimensional and I enjoy folding paper and so many things that you'll see very shortly. Books make a perfect gift for anyone on your list because they don't take up any room. They're small, they're easy to send. I guess I don't have to talk with you about books because you're the book people. I'm just going to talk about my books now. Okay. As we go through my books on the PowerPoint, I will mention the binding style, the materials, and the idea or inspiration behind making the book. I will share pages of the book slowly without narration, so possibly you can read the text or just enjoy the pages. I'm happy to take questions at the end. So hold your questions, and I love to answer questions. So off we go to screen share. And I think you're seeing it. Is this what you're seeing?
Looks perfect.
Thank you. I needed that little advice a little bit. Okay, excellent. So moving on. All right. So this first book has an accordion spine binding. I wrote A Prayer Among Friends by John Daniel. The accordion spine allows each of the pages to sort of float and gives space between the pages when the book is open. This is the cover. I covered the board with Tyvek that I colored a dark gray. And you can see that I have cut and embossed the lettering here. It says A Prayer Among Friends, and you can peek through that page to the next. I hoped to emphasize the basic points of this prayer, which is much like a list. Each page has a phrase written large, and the rest of the text is written smaller. So we're just going to go through the pages. I used a combination of cutting and embossing for the large letters on each page. The small text is written in simple monoline Romans using a mixture of acrylic gloss medium, a drop of black ink, and a bit of water. The blend gives a luminous gray that is raised and shiny when dry. The pages are Arches 140 hot press watercolor paper. The page layout is simply centered lines of writing which give the book some structure. I like that the viewer can peek through one page to the next. The book can be displayed open and each page separates itself from the others because of the accordion spine. I enjoy how the light and the shadows play on the pages. The restrained use of color seems to let the words play a bigger role. Okay. Moving next to a flag book. I like the idea of image and text together in a book and chose to work in this unusual way for this project involving drawings and brush calligraphy. This accordion book fold variation is known as a flag book. The accordion spine of the book has drawings of spring flowers. The brush-written text was photocopied onto acetate transparencies and made into flags that are mounted alternately to the front and back of the accordion fold spine. Photocopying my calligraphy onto acetate transparencies gave me a much better image than trying to write directly on the plastic. This shows the book's acetate transparency front cover with the list of spring bulbs. Here the book is open flat and the spine extended. Glue and I are not good friends. So I look for other ways to connect when possible. Here I used my sewing machine to attach the covers. It is possible to see the illustrations behind the flags, and the movement gives the book energy. Here the book is open, flat, and the spine extended. I've always liked seeing my writing backwards for some strange reason. And in this book, I'm able to see my writing backwards. I can't read it, but I enjoy just viewing it that way. Next up is a triangle accordion meander fold book. This triangular meander fold book is made from one piece of paper that is painted on both sides and carefully cut and folded. Each page has a cutout that supports a small green rectangle with text written in gold Fine-Tech watercolor. The text is brief, as there are only 9 of these small pop-up green rectangles. And the text for the book is small tasks accomplished one by one over time add up to something bigger than I thought I could have done. The book folds up neatly into this triangular origami box that you see below in this slide and straight on here. The Incomplete Manifesto for Growth by Bruce Mao is a wonderful bit of writing. This was a huge project and needed to be a very long accordion book. The text is comprised of a list of 43 suggestions of how to be more creative, written by Bruce Mao. There are 45 pages, and the book measures 8.5 feet and folds up to be 10 inches by 3 inches. Each of the 43 points is a page with a combination of rustics written in black and italic written in white. After much consideration, I chose the tan paper for its informal feel. Here's the book photographed in my home on a wall, and it doesn't even open all the way on the wall. And here it is stretched out on the floor. And here's the book in an exhibit at a calligraphy conference in 2017. Stretched out adequately, so it really does show all the pages. I wrote out all of the text and then cut and pasted a complete rough draft that I was able to trace over on my light box. Much time was spent selecting the best black, and I chose gouache for its denseness and matte finish. Also, there were many trials. Oops, I may have missed something here. Okay. Lots of back papers, yes. Many trials with white gouache and various pens to find the best fit for the long project. Time spent in these preliminary choices is very well spent. If you aren't familiar with Bruce Mau's Incomplete Manifesto for Growth, I highly recommend you find it easily online. This is a nested accordion pop-up fold book. These names for books are such a mouthful. I painted this piece of paper in a workshop almost 30 years ago and liked it very much. However, never knew what to actually do with it. It bumped around my studio for dozens of years. Then one day, something clicked and it all came together. I chose this nested accordion structure as I didn't want to cut the piece of paper. The statement by William James broke itself up well onto 6 pages, one line for each page. We work in the dark, we do what we can, we give what we have. Our doubt is our passion is our task. The rest is the madness of art. The abstract pulls the viewer's eye through the book, and with the writing on the lower portion of the page in black, the image is the dominant element. That's always the tough part when there is text and image. One needs to be dominant for the page layout to work. Here's a top view showing how the book is constructed. I like the way this book displays that piece of paper. Very, very well. This is a slip knot binding book, Advice from a Tree. It's a simple book with a hand embossed trees and Ben Shahn lettering done with gouache on 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. The sturdy pages are slip knot bound and they lie flat when open. All the photographs are side lit to show the hand embossing. The simple message is centered with the embossed tree on each page. The embossing was done using a series of shapes that were modules, and I just used them over and over to create different kinds of trees. So we'll just go through this. The book measures 3 inches by 5, and I made an edition of 12 for a book exchange I'm part of. All right, so this is a single signature binding. and it's the Dandelion life cycle. Oops, excuse me. The book is simply bound with a pamphlet stitch binding, and the cover is a piece of papyrus. I've collaged bits of wasp nest throughout the book, and that's the spiral design that you see here on the cover is part of a wasp nest. Wasp nests are layers and layers of this beautiful, beautiful paper-like substance. The wasp nest was a gift. I didn't find it in the wild. This first page has the only writing in the book, and it's written with a pencil. I felt it was good to be simple here. The book measures 3 inches. Oops, no, excuse me. The following pages depicts the life cycle of a dandelion with my hand-carved stamps. This set of stamps is modular and combined to make a wide variety of forms. The bits of wasp nests on every page represents the ground. So there are a few leaves in my modular set of dandelion stamps, a few blossoms, and just changing them around and coloring them differently. It's fun to play with them. This is the group of stamps that made the images that you saw. And the book opened up flat. If you need a breather or whatever, I'm going rather fast, so we're probably doing okay. During the recent pandemic, I collected the whimsical words that began appearing and decided to gather them in a book. I imagined a page for each word, along with a brief definition. I chose Benchon lettering and used a coronavirus drawing to replace the letter O as often as I could. The pages are flattened toilet paper rolls, as we well remember the supply problems with toilet paper at the beginning of the pandemic. The sturdy tan pages are bound in the slipknot style of binding with beads depicting the virus on the spine of the book. There is always something that needs to be a book. This is Endson binding, a poem by William Stafford entitled Deciding. The material I used for this book is something I found in a floral supply shop. I think it's made from egg cartons and string. And I don't know what floral people use it for, displays of some kind, but I snagged it thinking it was beautiful and that someday I would figure something to do with it. I came upon this brief poem by William Stafford and thought to use this strange rough material in some way with this poem. I couldn't write on the material, so again, I photocopied my calligraphy onto acetate transparencies and sewed them onto the pages. I chose a simple italic with the initial caps written with a brush. This seemed in line with the visually active edges on the pages, and let the material be the dominant element. One mine the Indians worked had gold so good they left it there for God to keep. At night sometimes you think your way that far, that deep, or almost. You hold all things or not, depending not on greed, but whether they suit what life begins to mean. Like those workers, you study what moves, what stays. You bow, and then, like them, you know what's God, what's world, what's gold. William Stafford. I'm a huge fan of his poems. This is a single signature pamphlet binding. I came across this charming poem about spring by Linda Pastan during a time I was actively eco-dyeing paper. I decided to write the poem Spring using a few of the eco-dyed papers. Rather than having all the pages the same size, I chose to let the width of the page be incrementally narrower as it goes through the book. The page you see in the center here is about half as wide as the pages in the back. I chose Ben Shahn lettering and wrote with a purple gouache, aligning the words to the outside edge of the pages. The poem is a quirky take on spring's arrival. It seems just right in this unusual binding with the strange page layout to use Ben Shahn lettering. I try always to listen to the text and feel that helps me make the finished piece. Just as we lose hope, she ambles in, a late guest dragging her hem of wildflowers, her torn veil of mist, of light rain, blowing her dandelion breath in our ears, and we forgive her. Turning from chilly winter waves, we throw off our faithful sweaters and open our arms. This book is on display in my home on a music stand, and it's so enjoyable that it shows all of its pages. That's unusual for a book, especially one with just a pamphlet stitched binding. This again is pamphlet stitch bound. I used copper wire rather than thread. It is a poem by Billy Collins, the former poet laureate of the United States. The title of the poem is Days, and you can see it embossed there on the front cover. I used paste paper for the pages in this book, and when I did the paste paper, I knew I was going to write this poem, which is not always the way I work, but I was happy to have known what I want to write as I was making those paste papers. Each page has an opening going through the book to the back. One folds forward and one folds back, and that gets the colors to mix in a sort of harmonious way as the book goes through. There's a hole in the book right through to the back. I wrote with copper. And this shows the book open, back and front. Another poem by Billy Collins, Forgetfulness. This is unusual binding, unusual materials. I was inspired to seek unusual materials as I was planning this book. I think of the phrase, my mind is like a sieve when I think of forgetfulness. I explored gauze, handmade papers, and finally landed upon window screening. It's easy to cut and makes very supple pages. I penned the poem on translucent vellum and attached the vellum to the window screening with grommets. The title on the cover is placed between two pieces of screening and reinforced with duct tape. The pages open and sort of pile up at various angles. To attach the book on the left side, kind of a quasi-Japanese bound situation, I used what I could find in my garage, and quite like that, none of the items are the same. Is this book practical? No. Is it fun? I think yes. Here are some of the trials and testing of materials. It was such an enjoyable experience to work with these lovely words and crazy materials. This is Piano Hinge Stick Binding, and it's a poem by Brian Bilston, How to Avoid Mixing Your Metaphors. I used a different script for every line of the 4 verses. Many of the counters of the letter O were gilded. It's not rocket surgery. First, get all your ducks on the same page. After all, you can't make an omelet without breaking stride. Be sure to watch what you write with a fine-tuned comb. Check and recheck until the cows turn blue. It's as easy as falling off a piece of cake. Don't worry about opening up a whole hill of beans. You can burn that bridge when you come to it, if you follow where I'm coming from. Concentrate, keep your door closed and your enemies closer. Finally, don't take the moral high horse. If the metaphor fits, walk a mile in it. This was such a fun book to work on, and it stands beautifully on those sticks. Here it is laying on my picnic table for a photo shoot, but it has a wonderful way of displaying itself. Unusual Materials and Robert Frost. The 4 pages of this book are held together with metal hinges glued in place. I wrote with a white gel pen on the varied surfaces. The latch effectively closes the book. We make a little order where we are, and the big sweep of history on which we can have little effect doesn't overwhelm us. We do it in colors, with a garden, with furnishings of a room, or with sounds and words. We make a little form and we gain composure. Robert Frost. I enjoy the sound this book makes when flipping its pages. A 3-verse poem by Mary Oliver. Can 3 stacked rocks be a book? Something to ponder. I used white gel pens on river rocks. It's a 3-verse poem. Whirlwind binding. The whirlwind binding is an ancient style of binding that is sort of like a scroll and sort of like a banner. There are 5 pages to my book here, and it's held together at the top with a group of vintage pens and brushes. Dictionary pages with gesso applied are used for the pages. I used my sewing machine to connect the pages. The first page is 1 dictionary page. The second page is 2 dictionary pages, machine sewn. The third page is 3 dictionary pages. You get the idea. They're layers of dictionary pages. There are 15 dictionary pages in this Whirlwind book. I chose to keep the text simple with the left justified margins. I wrote with a folded pen and Sumi ink. The loosely written gilded caps provide a little contrast. Many trials and much testing were involved. Using gesso on the pages made sense to filter the dictionary text and give the page a little more heft, as well as create a good surface for writing and gilding. Here's the complete piece by Carl Sagan, so you can read and enjoy the words at your leisure. This book came together with grace and ease and is very special to me. These are the drafts for each page. And there it is. This book has traveled across the country several times. It rolls up beautifully and then unrolls beautifully. I like its indestructibility. It's very tough. I decided not to cut the threads. It seemed nice to just let them be as they were from the sewing machine. And I just love how this book acts and can be so interesting to me. That is my presentation, and I would love to know if you have any questions.
I saw one question come in during the talk that it was one that I had also, Carol, is you embossing. Your embossing was very you used it in a lot of different places, and but you didn't talk too much about what you're embossing with or on.
It's hand embossing, and I cut my own stencils. It's my art. I don't buy anything and use it.
And are you using, is it Mylar or wire or?
I cut my stencils from manila file folder,
Oh,
and I use a run out ballpoint pen as a stylus to press from behind and make the image. On my website, I teach blind embossing, and I've taught it on Zoom, and I recorded it, and I offer it as I think it's a 2-hour Zoom class on you can sign up for it on my website, hand embossing, caroldubosch.com, if you want to learn more about embossing.
I was very, I guess I jumped to the questions a little quick because I wanted that book was just one of the absolutely fascinating collection. I was really inspired by the variety of the books that you have of the different styles and the way the book form really worked with the text. You could tell that really a lot had gone into that. And I mean, book after book, I was writing a note about, I mean, the using the acetate flags in the garden book so you could see the picture through the text. I mean, that was what a great idea.
Thank
So
you.
I really enjoyed, and I loved where you, on the very first book you showed, The Prayer Among Friends, where you cut out part of the text so you could see it, each word as you went through. Just the lovely, lovely books. I really thank you so much for such a great assortment.
Well, I think for a very long time about the text, because that's my job, is to honor those words with the skills I have. And that's my job. Any other questions?
I have another question.
Okay.
I was wondering on the life cycle of a dandelion, that was the one with it had a very coarse cover and then with the collaged wasp nest. And I missed what you said that cover was.
Papyrus.
Oh, and was the inside papyrus too? It was smoother. It was
No,
like
the
toddy
inside
or something.
was just an oatmeal kind of handmade paper. I only had the one piece of papyrus, and I
Well, you
had to
could
do
never
something.
write on that papyrus anyway.
Well, I had to do something special with it, so
Yeah.
using it for the cover made sense.
Yeah, I really like the different materials in the books too. This is the one problem with the Zoom presentations is not being able to see them and really appreciate all those different materials. That floral one that you had, whatever that, remember that weird white stuff in the William Stafford book and deciding and then the papyrus. Oh, it's so many great materials. I like on the Days by Billy Collins. That was the one with the holes folded back and forth. Did
Yes,
you cut those holes before assembling or once assembled, or how much mocking up of that particular
tremendous
book did you
amount
do?
of mocking up. There's a dummy book that looks exactly like that. Scrap
Wow.
paper. I don't jump onto the good paper until I know exactly what I want to do, and it's exactly what I want. I do tremendous amount of preliminary work on anything I do. It just that's how it works at my house.
Well, it really shows in such fabulous work. And that book you bound, I think you said you bound that with copper wire.
Yeah,
So how did you find that to work with?
it's very, very thin, 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 super thin copper wire. I just put it in a needle and thought, this might work.
It didn't break or
Hasn't yet.
wow, fascinating. And then on forgetfulness, I noticed when you folded the screens over that you could see some of the text through the screen. Was that the text coming through the paper through the screen?
Well, I was writing on vellum,
Oh, that was vellum. Oh, I missed that. Okay.
translucent vellum. So there was some translucency and then the screen. So yeah.
Yeah, very translucent. That's cool.
Mhm.
Like I love the idea that the mind is a sieve and your
Yeah,
letters are just
that's
flowing
just
through
something
it
I've
and
always, I guess I've heard people say, oh, my mind is just like a sieve.
mm-hmm.
That's the first thing I thought of when I decided to write that poem, Forgetfulness. It's a tremendous poem. It's wonderful.
And
So
then on your Robert Frost book with all the different materials, the rock and the wood,
yes,
my thought on that was you couldn't use your light box on a rock. So
no,
I was wondering I mean, did you like draw around the rock to work on the spacing or how did you work that one out?
I had something close by that was for the spacing, and I make guidelines with very skinny pieces of masking tape, strips of masking tape on the rock and or the wood or whatever. And then I can just peel it off. I don't have to erase anything or worry, and I'll be able to write straight.
Wow, that was and so that the stacked rocks, the Mary Oliver, you did the same thing with
Yes,
the to guide it. I
yes.
really like those written on rocks and the glued hinges to make it into a book. Very fun book.
The rocks, the Mary Oliver poem, um, the thing that's nice is that if I'm writing and I spell something wrong, I can get up and go to the sink and just scrub it off. and let it dry and continue. It's
And
a
you can
rock.
scrub, because you're using gouache, is that why it scrubs? Oh, no, you said gel pen, right?
Gel pen
But the gel pen just comes off the rock easily enough?
with a toothbrush and some scrubbing. Yeah,
Wow. It's kind of like the olden days, I mean, olden when they were working on the
tablets,
the
tablets.
skins, the vellum skin, or not, is that the right word? Vellum skins? What they
Yeah,
call it? Anyway, and they would scrape the text off there and then recalligraphy it if they had done a mistake.
absolutely. Yep.
How come we don't have more books on rocks? We should.
If it's a book, you have to decide whether or not Three Stacked Rocks is a book.
Well.
It is at my house, so.
And now I have been kind of hogging the photos. I mean, the photos, the questions. Does anybody shout out somebody if you have a I see Nan raising her hand there.
Yeah, Carol, I notice you use Ben Shahn a lot. Is that, I mean, when you're doing the plotting of the book, the font or the hand comes to you as you're doing the planning, and because there every time it was absolutely perfect for what the book said, and
I'll tell you what I do, Nan. I that decision's important in that project, any
yeah,
project. I run a slideshow in my mind. I go, okay, let's see what it looks like. Unchal, how about italic? What about pointed pen? Roman caps, yada yada. And I can visualize it,
yeah,
well enough.
yeah,
And I think Ben Shahn lettering has a light, whimsical, loose, casual feel.
yeah.
And yeah, I do use it a lot. I love it.
What pen point do you use for that?
I use folded pen for Ben Shahn lettering.
And what size were those letters? Maybe an inch?
Yeah, maybe. No,
Almost about an inch. Yeah. It'd have to be, they couldn't be too small with a folded pen, could they?
if
Unless
you
you had a
waited,
tiny
you
folded
waited
pen.
20 seconds, I can get the book.
Is Ben is that the one where the letters are kind of blended together
And the one which uses the back E, backwards E a lot.
I was
Yeah.
really surprised how legible that was for
Oh,
having
that's a
so many
great
letters
hand.
joined together and stuff.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those look like they're about an inch tall
Yeah.
or three
I
quarters of an
figured
inch.
they had to be.
3/4.
I love the form on that. What a great idea to do the different size pages so that you can see it all when it's open.
Yeah.
That was a surprise, actually, Lisa, that it's such a good display book. It just cooperates. It's really nice.
Yeah, it is a lovely book.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Lynn.
I'm curious. I'm sort of new to individual bookmaking, and I wasn't aware that you could just use a poem that's somebody has a copyright on. So I'm curious. That is available, huh?
That's a really good question, Lynn. My son is an attorney, and his area of expertise is intellectual property. And he tells me that a one-off book is fine. I can't market that book
Right.
with somebody's without permission.
That's what I was curious about. I thought since it's a singular book, it might be something that you could use once like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know because, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, now I think that you said you were teaching when we were talking before, you said, Carol, you were teaching in Portland later this year. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you have coming up on your teaching schedule?
Okay. Portland Society for Calligraphy is sponsoring me to teach 2 sessions teaching people to write with a folded pen. And they're 3-hour sessions on May 18th is one of them, and June 1st is the second one. And the two are together, and you can register for those on the Portland Society for Calligraphy.org website.
And these are online classes?
They're Zoom, those two are Zoom classes,
Okay,
yes.
so accessible to anybody.
Yes. And
I
on
mean,
my
any place.
website are recordings of my previous classes. There's probably a dozen or more available.
Claudia just popped in and asked what a folded pen was. Do you have one handy that you could show?
Sure. I have a really big one that is good for Zoom. It looks like a taco.
Oh, I
So
see.
now you put ink or paint inside that?
Yeah,
How do you load it?
dip.
Oh,
The Whirlwind book with the Carl Sagan words, the Whirlwind book, that was written with a folded pen. And all of the Ben Shahn lettering is done with a folded pen. Real ones are only about this big. This one just is big for, this is a folded pen.
and do you make all your own folded pens?
In in-person classes, I teach how to make them, but I can't teach how to make them on Zoom. So you have to buy them.
Oh, but you can buy them?
Yes,
Oh.
John Neal, booksellers,
Oh, well, of course.
or
Of
Paper
course
and Ink
John Deere would
Arts.
have them.
Yes.
All right. Anything else coming up on your schedule that we should know about? Any place to go see your work? Are you gonna have a show anywhere?
No, I don't have anything planned.
All right. Well, then I think I'll turn the recording off. And
So there was another source